you should be able to see my class link page now. And when we're in class link, we are going to look for the Zoom icon. Everyone should have the Zoom icon. It might be in a different spot, but it's there. So when we click on Zoom, it's going to bring us to the zoom.us website, and specifically the meetings page. Here we can see our upcoming meetings, and then we're going to take a look at scheduling a meeting. So to do so, we click here on the top right where it says schedule a meeting. Okay, well, first we can title our meeting. So we can do session 1B. We can enter the description, right? This looks kind of similar to a calendar event. Now, the one difference is down here where it says recurring meeting. So we have a recurring meeting. So similar to a calendar event, if you have something set for every week, every month, that's what this is. However, there's also this option in the dropdown for no fixed time. No fixed time. Now, what that does is it just makes this a long-standing meeting. So, for example, I might use this for parent-teacher conferences, or as Todd mentioned, if I have a Google Classroom that I'm using Zoom with, I would want it to be a recurring meeting. So I could just continue to use this specific link, meeting link, with that class. I don't have to change it every day, and it's specific for this class. If you leave the meeting and it's a recurring meeting, that meeting ends. It's not like someone can join. It's not like a live room. It's all dependent on the host being there. That's what opens up that Zoom meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this as recurring. And I did forget to mention this duration set part right here. We have 1 hour. Don't worry if you schedule something for an hour and it goes an hour 15. It's not like Zoom's going to shut off the meeting because it's past its time. It's more just for scheduling purposes. But again, I'm going to go with recurring. Then we have our meeting ID. We recommend that you have it generate automatically. Your personal meeting ID is, again, something you should keep personal. We're going to leave this as automatic. And the reasons you might need an ID is if you are manually joining a meeting, maybe through the app on a phone, and it's asking you for the meeting ID, or if you're using a different website like Signup Genius, it might ask you for the meeting ID, and that'll integrate Zoom there. We have the security option here. So we can set a password for our meeting. If we do not want to have that set up, we can uncheck that. And we also have the waiting room. Now, personally, I prefer right now leaving it just as the waiting room, because with the passcode, I feel like, this is something new. I'm getting used to it. The users, everyone else is getting used to it. I don't want to create extra obstacles right as soon as we get started. But if there are, security issues or concerns, by all means, check that passcode box. And then Todd has a great idea as far as going the other route. So instead of going no passcode waiting room, he does something a little different.
So yeah, I would agree with Joe that for me, I like the waiting room as well, because I can use it maybe to take attendance or see who's joining my meeting, and it provides me that little extra sense of security. But there are a couple teachers I work with at the secondary level who have said they don't like the waiting room. And the reason they don't like it is they kind of get frustrated by the fact that they have to go back and admit people into the meeting or click on a little icon to admit people. So what they did was they turned the waiting room off, and they're using a passcode. So their thought on that was, if the waiting room is off and there's a passcode, there's still that little extra sense of security. Students need to know the passcode to get in, and then they can hop right into the meeting. They don't need to be confirmed. But in that sense, he's feeling like he can trust his class and he knows his students well enough for that to happen. So that's why he goes that route. But, like Joe said, you got to use what works best for you.
All righty, so we'll keep going. These are just your default settings for when people join a meeting. So do we want the host, do we want our video to be on when we join? Do we want the participants' video to be on automatically when they join? Again, it can be changed. The participant can turn off their camera. It's just the default setting. For audio, we're going to leave this at both. There's no need to, just choose computer audio. There's more security with Zoom, so there shouldn't be any issues with allowing telephone call-ins. And then finally here, we get down to the meeting options. And these are just a few of the things that we can choose to customize our meeting. But the one thing we really want to key in on is this require authentication to join. Please, please, please do not check that box off. While we have been saying, it's up, you can use your discretion, not in this case. We do not want to require authentication to join because right now it's just the staff, building staff that have Zoom licenses. The students do not have a Zoom license. So if we had this box checked off, they wouldn't be able to get in. Or someone who's using a different device who can't remember their info or can't remember how to log into Zoom, it might cause some trouble getting started with your meeting and having all your participants there on time. So definitely leave that unchecked. And as you can see, there's some other options here that I will not read to you. But then at the bottom, we have the alternative hosts. So again, this is something that separates Zoom from Google Meet, in my opinion. I can assign Todd as an alternative host to this meeting. So what does that mean? Well, now, if this meeting is about to start and I am not in the room yet, but Todd is, he becomes the host. And he can admit people, he can manage the room. And as soon as I join the Zoom meeting, I reclaim ownership, I become the host again, and then Todd becomes the co-host. And the nice thing about that is, especially if you're in a team talk classroom, both teachers can manage the participation in the chat and have the ability to remove and mute students. Now, with Google Meet, it's whoever joins the meet first. So if the special ed teacher joins first, they have control. If the regular ed teacher joins first, they have control. So this is a little more dynamic than that. Okay, so now our meeting is scheduled, and we can go back down here if we need to make any edits to the meeting. We can add it to our Google Calendar, but we're going to focus on this invite link. So after we schedule a meeting, we get an invite link. I'm going to go ahead and click this copy invitation button. You see here we get the information for joining this session. So I can go ahead and copy the meeting invitation, and I can post it in whatever forum I'm using to share this information. So if it's Google Classroom, I can go ahead and take this info. Maybe I'll polish it up a little bit when I actually post it so it looks a little cleaner for students. But you can go ahead and post this. You'll see this is the link to join. And then down here, we have the mobile call-in number. So there's the call-in number and then the passcode if there is one. Anything else on that, Todd?
Oh, we just had a question, and I think the answer is that it only goes to your calendar, right? That wouldn't go to somebody else's calendar until you invite them through Google Calendar?
That is correct. Good question. Okay. Good question. Yep. All right. The last thing we're going to look at this page is one of the features available on Zoom, and that is the ability to add a poll. So we're going to go ahead and add a poll, and we do so by clicking the Add button. We can type in a title. Go with my generic one. Unfortunately, I'm a Jets fan. And I'm going to put that in the question box. And then we can put a title. We can do poll number 1. You can see there you can customize each question. We can add multiple questions to a poll. We can also add multiple polls to a meeting. So maybe you want to have an entry ticket. So maybe this could be entry ticket, and then your next one would be exit ticket. So you can kind of get some data as far as how the students are doing from before and after the lesson. So I'm going to hit save here. And now this poll is saved for my meeting. When you are in the Zoom meet, you will be able to click a button that says poll. If you don't have the poll set up through the website and you click that poll button, which we'll take a look at, it's going to just take you right back to the website anyway. All right, so now we're going to move along. I'm going to briefly pop in this profile section. So before we were in meetings, because that's where ClassLink takes us, but we're going to go to profile and we're just going to look at two specific things here. The first is your picture. If you want to change your picture, you can do that here by clicking change and then selecting an image from your device. The other thing is this calendar and contacts integration. It may not automatically be configured. So if that is the case, just simply go to this section and click connect account to your Google Calendar. Then you'll just hit allow. This allows your Zoom and Google Calendar to communicate and allows that for that integration. Okay. And then I'm going to head over to the reports section now. All right, and the reports section is good news because from what we've heard, attendance tracking in meetings, whether it's a staff meeting, whether it's a classroom, it has been a problem, the attendance, because you've had to use extensions in Google Meet, and a lot of times that leads to some additional problems. Well, with Zoom, it's built right in. So I can click on the usage report, and I can set my filter for the past month. And then I can go look for the meeting that I'm trying to find the attendance for. And I'm just going to go with this parent-teacher conference brainstorming. And then I go and click on the number 8. And when I click on that number, you can see we get the name of the people in the meeting and the join time and the leave time. So I've heard cases of guardians or parents saying, well, my kid's been attending class, but you're marking him absent. It's Google Meet or whatnot. This is something where you get that concrete data, who was in there, who wasn't, and when they left. If you want to compile this data or the data from multiple meetings, you can select all those meetings, and then you can export them to a CSV file. So that'll just put them in a spreadsheet. So again, that's a great way to manage attendance and tracking time and meeting. All right, are we okay to move on to settings?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, settings. It's a little overwhelming, but don't worry, we're not going to go over all of it. We're really going to go over the things that are more relevant to us, especially in education. First thing is the waiting room. In the waiting room, we have the ability to customize. So if I have it turned on, I can customize my waiting room. I simply click customize, and then you'll see I can change the first dialogue that comes up. I can add an image or a topic. Now, Todd had a great idea that I'm going to start using as far as adding something on this waiting room to get that learning, the kids thinking before the meeting even starts.
So I was thinking with that, where you have the ability to add in your logo, that you could go through and put a picture to start your class. So let's say I used to teach secondary social studies. I maybe could find something related to World War II when we were doing that unit in Pearl Harbor and put that picture in as my logo. And so then when I have that picture in as the logo, I can type in a little discussion question or a statement that I want the kids to think about related to the picture. So that way, when they jump into the meeting, they would know what to kind of expect and what we're going to start. This could also be a spot to put an icebreaker. We had a really good point yesterday. Someone mentioned where Joe put that question. You could also put in a link to maybe a YouTube website, a YouTube video or some other website that you want the kids to take a look at before they start class. So you can get really creative in how you want to use that waiting room view. That will work for your class and get things going.
Yeah, I love that idea. Thank you, Todd. So now we're going to just scroll down. We went over some of this and some of the others. I mean, you can look if you're interested, but a lot of it does not necessarily pertain to what we need. So we're going to go to this basic meeting settings. The first thing is the chat. So we can turn off the chat by clicking that toggle switch, and it'll say here, these settings might change because I'm turning it off. Now I'm going to leave it on but that is how you could disable the chat. Excuse me. And then here we have the little checkbox, prevent participants from saving the chat. And then there's this little icon right here. And what this icon means is that certain software or hardware is required in order for this feature to work. So basically, if it's a Chromebook device, this will not work. So if you see this little icon and you're on a Chromebook, or students are on a Chromebook, they will not have the ability to do that feature. So the students could not save chats as if they're using their Chromebook. And you can hover over it and see the details as to what the requirements are for each feature. Alrighty, we're gonna scroll down. Again, this is the second thing where we're gonna kind of give the directive to leave this feature disabled. And this is the allow meeting participants to send private messages to one another. There's no need for participants to send private messages to each other because you can't monitor that, and it could just lead to issues. So that you can leave that off. We're going to keep going down, and now we have the screen sharing section. And what we're talking about with screen sharing is when I share my screen, similar to in a Google Meet if you've done that before, it's going to ask how we want it set up. So who can share their screen? Well, I've been primarily working with staff recently, so I've left it at all participants. However, if you are running a meeting and it's going to be run predominantly by you, you would want to keep that as the host only. Then if we keep going on down here, we have the annotation tool. So when you're sharing your screen, if I'm sharing a window on my browser, I can use annotation tools and to highlight different things that I want to call attention to for the students. Now, students cannot annotate because, as you can see, it requires certain hardware that is not in the Chromebooks, but they can view the annotation that a teacher makes. They just cannot annotate on their end. And then you can share any annotations you make, if you want to save that as documentation that students can reference later, or staff. And then we have a whiteboard. This is kind of similar in the sense that students will not have the ability to, share their whiteboard, but they will be able to see if a staff member creates a whiteboard. And then you can go ahead and, mark up the whiteboard, and then you can save it as either an image file like a PNG or a document-based file as like a PDF. All right. Anything that I missed there, Todd?
I think the one thing we talked about that as we got to the middle was that Control F feature. So as you can see, as Joe's going through this with those icons and just all the different settings, it can feel overwhelming and there is a lot in there. And so what we suggest for people just exploring this program and getting used to it, if you know a setting that you want to look for, there's a way that you can search for it. So let's say you want to find a setting related to the chat. You could, on your keyboard, press the Control button and then hit the letter F. If you do that, you get a search feature. And so in that search feature, if you type in the word chat, every time you hit return on your keyboard or enter now, it'll take you to all the words that, all the settings that have the word chat in it. And then this will allow you to go through and make changes. So if you have an idea of what you want to change and the setting that's not working for you, if you can think of a keyword to search for, that can be helpful. And as Joe says, it's actually a lifesaver in a lot of different areas of Chrome and your computer as well.
Yeah, that's an awesome tip, Todd. I live by the Control F. It's such a great shortcut to know. I use it even for non-work related things on the computer. So now we have the virtual background. And again, not available on Chromebooks, but here we could add a display for behind our video that will show up. And we'll look at that when we get into the Zoom meeting itself. We also have video filtering. So if you want to throw on a pair of shades or a pig nose, you can do that through the video filter option. Okay, I'm going to stop there as far as the settings go, and we're going to move on over to the recording. Now, recording in Zoom is superior than the recording in Meet. And when I say that, that's because the meetings in Zoom allow you to customize just what it is that's being recorded. Because right now, if we record a Google Meet, right, it's the active presenter on the screen and it is the desktop, right? There's no way to customize that. It's always going to be that format. With this, we have the ability to change what is being recorded. So right now we can see record active speaker, the gallery view, and shared screen separately. So you might have a ton of files if all of these are checked off. Another one that might be helpful to some staff, depending on your position, is record an audio only file. So you would get a separate file from the video, and it would just be the audio of the meeting. Again, you can play around with those. And then you can choose if you want that to save in the cloud. And if it does save in the cloud, it will be there for up to 60 days. After 60 days, it will be removed. That's the setting on Zoom. If you do want to save a specific video, you might want to download it and then add it to your Google Drive. And then the other option here is local recording. If we click this, it'll save it to our device. And again, it eventually, if you accumulate a bunch of videos, that will take up a lot of space on your machine. So you might want to move those to Google Drive as well, just in case you do have to delete them when you run low on storage. Okay. I think I'm going to hop into a Zoom meeting unless Todd has anything else.
When you were, and I may have missed it, did you talk about how those recordings go to the documents folder?
I didn't. Okay. Thank you.
So while Joe's switching over, just one thing to note that any recordings you do typically will default and go to your downloads, or your documents folder in your file explorer. So they download basically into that documents folder, and you can search for a folder called Zoom. The reason I want to tell you that is you eventually can go into the settings and change that when you're inside of a Zoom meeting if you wanted to go somewhere else. But when you first get started, that'll be the default if you're having trouble finding those recordings.
Great. Yeah, because it's always hard to find things after you download them. So that's good to know. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera in Google Meet because I am going to bring up my Zoom meeting. Now, to start, I'm just going to be sharing my screen. And then we're going to take a look at what Zoom looks like on my end. Then in a few minutes, we're all going to jump in this same Zoom call so we can see what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my video. All righty. And now, again, you could always set up, I like to use my virtual backgrounds. So we could set up our virtual background for any fans of The Office. You'll appreciate that. And then we're going to go from the bottom left of the side of the toolbar all the way to the right. So the first section here says this microphone, and this is to mute or unmute yourself. To click, if we click this little arrow here next to the microphone, we can change the microphone that we're using or the speaker. So if you're having any issues as far as, hey, people can't hear me or I can't hear them, this is what you would click and this is where you would go. All right, I am going to turn off my video for a minute just because it's distracting. All right, then we have the start video. And again, we have this little arrow here. And if we click this arrow, we get additional settings. We're going to look at the virtual backgrounds and video filters, but first we're going to look at the video settings. This is really kind of a hidden important thing to be able to locate. Video settings. And again, we click on this little arrow next to the camera to get there. And here it'll bring us to the video settings. It shows, okay, how many participants are going to be displayed in the gallery view. And then from here, we can also hop over to the general area. And Todd is going to explain why he loves using this dual monitor feature. And again, this is not turned on by default. So we would have to go to these settings to turn them on.
And that's a great point, Joe, because we realize that with teachers who were hooked up to their projectors or some sort of second screen, that box made life a lot easier. So when you check the box to have on dual monitors, basically what will happen is if you're using two screens, you check dual monitors and you decide to share something on your screen for the students to see. When you share that document or website, what will happen is that item will go onto your computer so you can see what it is that you're sharing. And then the second screen will have all of the participants kind of shot over to it. And so you can see everybody on that second screen that you want to take a look at, make sure they're kind of following along or hopefully following along. And then on your screen, you see what you're presenting. And if you get in the good habit and you're using it a lot, it actually seems to be a little bit easier than Google Meet because Zoom recognizes what you're trying to do with that sharing screen. So it's something just to explore. There have been people who have left it unchecked and kind of worked around it. That is a possibility, but we really like that that box checked. It makes life easier.
Thank you. Yeah, if you're connected to a smart board, definitely turn that on or a separate monitor. Then we have the share screen. I'm just going to go into this real quick now since we're in here. One of the things that is one of the frequently requested features, right, is, hey, how do I share my video and audio at the same time without it lagging? And, while the quality on Google Meet definitely isn't great, Zoom's a little bit better with that. And to optimize our performance and how that goes, we can go to the share screen section and then go to our advanced setting. And then we can turn on hardware acceleration for screen sharing. And that will help speed up the what's being displayed from your screen. All right, I am going to X out of here. And now we have the security button on the bottom. And again, we already said all this stuff. You can always change it while you're in the meeting. Nothing is permanent. And you have the lock meeting ability. So if you want to lock the meeting 10 minutes after it starts, you can do so. People will not be able to get in. This is the poll button that I showed you, and we'll take a look once we're all in there of what that'll look like. We have the chat, and then we have the share screen. So, ironically, we're using Google Meet to do a Zoom training. And that's because when we share our screen on Zoom, it does not always show the actual the Zoom application when sharing the screen. So we wanted to make sure you could see all the features, which is why we're using Meet right now. But if we were to click share screen on Zoom, you should be able to see my box that pops up here. And it just is asking, what do you want to display? What do you want to share? A whiteboard, a screen? And then do you want to share your computer sound? And do you want to optimize the sharing for a video clip? So those are all things you can kind of customize there. Then the other feature that I think is kind of useful is this advanced section. There's this music or computer sound only. Maybe, there's a little bit of work time where students are working independently. You can put on some music in the background if you wanted to kind of, set that environment during times when you're not, presenting or speaking. Okay. Now on the bottom here, we have the breakout rooms. So when we click on breakout rooms, we can choose how many rooms we would like. We can have it so that students or staff are automatically put into breakout rooms. We can assign people to the rooms manually, or we could let people choose their own room. So I'm going to go ahead and say let people choose their own room. We'll go with 3. Then we'll hit create. And this is what it'll look like from the host point of view. We can rename the room. We can assign participants to the room. And then we can add we can add an option for another room while the breakouts are happening. Now, when the district purchased Zoom and it was rolled out to all staff, the breakout feature was disabled, and it still currently is for the majority of staff. And the reasoning behind that is we wanted to ensure that there's a policy in place as far as expectations on the teacher's end when working with students in breakout rooms, and what's appropriate behavior and to ensure safety and privacy laws are being followed. And Todd can provide a little bit more info on that moving forward.
Yeah, basically the idea with that is going to be that if you have breakout rooms, you should try and do your best to have an adult in every one of the breakout rooms if you can make that happen. But as we know as educators, that can't always be the case. And so there'll be just some policies to kind of go through and run over with your students and some expectations to set so that they can maybe kind of have these breakout rooms where they're leading them, but you're still frequently checking in on them and things like that. And so that should be coming out in the next few weeks, hopefully sooner rather than later. With those expectations, you can go over and get using that feature.
Awesome. All right. Now, again, I didn't go over this in the settings because, like Todd said, as Todd had mentioned, that Control Find button, there are a lot of settings. So sometimes you scroll past what you're looking for. So Control F is a great way to not miss something like breakout rooms. And in the breakout room settings, you could pre-assign rooms for people, so you're not doing it when the meeting's actually going on. Okay. Next, we have the participant section. So here we have these little cues down on the bottom. And this can be valuable for instructional purposes or for a staff meeting. When people are hesitant to turn on their microphone or participation is lacking, because we've heard one of the challenges is really getting the students to turn off their microphone and engage, or kind of dead air in a staff meeting or academy meeting. So we can use these to get more audience engagement. So if we can ask, hey, are you good to move on? Please click the green check mark if you're ready. Hopefully they're not asking for a break, but they have the ability to kind of put all these little prompts up next to their name. So if I click that, it means, okay, we're good to go. You'll also see the invite button down here. We can click invite, and from here we can get the link or the invitation. So you can see here, participants, waiting room, Michael Highland. So I can send a message to people in the waiting room if I'm not ready to admit them. And I can manually click admit if I am ready to admit Mr. Highland into this meeting. If you have 10 people in the waiting room, you can admit everyone at once. You do not have to go through and click each individual person. So I can go ahead and admit him. And then that's what this looks like. If I hover over, this is the last thing, and then we're all going to hop in. If I hover over Mike Highland's name and I go to more, you have a few options here. I can ask him to start a video. I can make him the host, and I can remove him from the meeting.